All right, can you guys hear us through your connection? Yeah, okay. Joys of technology. And seriously, thank you again for making Ms. Marvel part of the curriculum and everything. That was fantastic. Okay, yeah, whatever you guys want. All right, get off the phone. Got it. Yeah, just text me. So they're just setting up. They're going to do, get everybody seated, and then I guess do the volume. Just turn it down. They'll eventually call out to us. Just wait.
Right here. Yeah.
Secondly, you can actually read the comics. You know, you can grab a novel set, you can just package it
So, ready? That's, just so you know, Marvel Entertainment. On the other end, that's in New York City right now, which is pretty cool. Which is pretty cool, just to put things in perspective. So we're gonna sign on live with our guests in a little bit here. But first, I want to talk a little bit about this program and about the Cassandra Voss Center. And then we'll hear about our guest in New York City, Sana Amanat. So we are the Cassandra Voss Center. How many of you have been into the building across the way? I'm thrilled to see that. Please come and visit us, study there, come for programs. The Cassandra Voss Center's core values are that we are scholarship-driven, meaning that all of our programs are grounded in scholarship and theory in the field of gender studies and identity studies. We are welcoming, meaning we welcome all people into the conversation, into our doors, into around the table. Our programming is innovative in that we like to delight and intrigue and challenge folks who come in those doors and who are welcome. And finally, we are fun. We believe that delight resists tyranny. Scholarship-driven, welcoming, innovative, and fun. SWIFT are our core values of the Cassandra Voss Center, which helps us live our vision, which is transformative thinking for a just world. And we're kind of the Justice League here today. And by the way, happy Halloween, everybody. Woo! Happy Halloween. I'm seeing some awesome costumes like here and there, and you all look great. So a little bit about SkypeTacular, this series that we've put on. So you know that our year-long series is called Kapow, Who is Your Hero? So we're thinking about power and identity through the lens of comic books and superheroes. And as a sub-series to Kapow, we have SkypeTacular, which means that we get to highlight artists and scholars, big-time people within the comics industry, and particularly highlight artists and scholars of color within the comics industry. So about a month ago, we had Adela Funama talk about Super Black. Today, we are thrilled to have Sana Amanat speaking about Ms. Marvel from Marvel Entertainment. And in February, we'll have Jean Nguyen Yang talk about his American Book Award nominated American-born Chinese and other elements of comic book making and crafting. A breakdown about how this event will run. In a moment here, we'll hear about Sana Amanat, and then she will come onto the screen with us. And she'll get to speak with us for about 15 or 20 minutes discussing all sorts of things from being a woman in the comics industry to some exciting announcements that they have to share with us here today from Marvel. Then we'll have about 35 to 40 minutes for questions from all of you. And you will go ahead and just raise your hands at that time, and we'll have you shout them out, and I can even repeat them. And that's how that will run. So this will be about 50 minutes to an hour together, and then at the end there's time for conversation and some fun snacks and even temporary tattoos outside in the lobby. I know, it's really exciting. So a little bit about upcoming events after this. So on Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, which is Advisement Day, we will be hosting a screening and discussion of the film Dear White People, the breakout indie hit that is coming to Green Bay. So that's on Tuesday. Make sure you reserve your tickets. Reserve your tickets ahead of time for that. Also, next Friday, we'll be having Harry Grode come in and talk about Superman and Jewishness. And then I have mentioned in February, we'll have National Book Award winner Jean Nguyen Yang with us for SkypeTacular. So as always, as we always say, if you're wanting to keep abreast of what our programs look like and be up to date about them, then like us on Facebook and we will like you for real. And also, this is going to be live streamed onto our website, so if you want to share this experience with friends and be like, yeah, I was there live, you can do that, and that'll be posted on Facebook afterwards. And now, without much further ado, I introduce Carlin Crowley, the director of the center, to talk about Sana Amanat. Hey, are you ready for Halloween? Yeah. Here in the room. Okay, this is a really big night for us. So I'm Carlin Crowley. I'm on the faculty of Teach Women's and Gender Studies, and you're all here for the first ever Marvel SkypeTacular with St. Norbert College. So we need to do, there's a really scary mask in the back too. Welcome. Hi, so glad you're here. We need to do the Midwest proud and make sure we ask completely riveting, fascinating questions. I first want to give a big thank you to Joe Terbarelli, who's the Senior Communications Manager at Marvel. If he hadn't answered our email and 5,000 phone calls, we wouldn't all be sitting here. So because he did, and we convinced him that...
Oh, he's waving.
Hi, Joe! Hi, Joe! We're huge fans, and we told him that we would assign this text. So there are 3 faculty members who all assigned Ms. Marvel, and those classes are all here. Can you clap if you're in one of those classes? Woo! So Ms. Marvel, which you can also purchase now, all volumes are in one beautiful new package, and you can get it afterward. You read this, you thought about it, and we're going to have a comics contest at the end of the semester for anybody who comes up with a comic that is just a couple of, a few squares of a comic that I'm not using the right language because I'm learning how to be a comics person, right? But that deals with some of the issues in this Marvel. I also wanted to give out a shout out to Dave Honeycutt, who's a faculty member in biology and a super comic nerd in the back. His dog is 19. Speaking out. I probably shouldn't be touching that, right? But it is a classic. He brought his 1978 Ms. Marvel. So if you're really nice and you ask him, then maybe you can look at it. All right, so it's my pleasure to introduce Sana Amanat, and I wanted to also give you a heads up that I think you are in for a treat for some special guests from Marvel here today. Surprise guests, it's a historic moment, and they will introduce themselves. I don't want to reveal anything beforehand. So Sana Amanat is an editor at Marvel Entertainment, creator of the comic Ms. Marvel, which features a Muslim Pakistani American teenager from New Jersey named Kapow. Hi!
Hey guys, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm going to talk about your comic book, but really you should be talking about your comic book. So let me just say a few more things, and then we'll absolutely take it away with you. So Kamala has the ability to shapeshift and takes her alias name of Ms. Marvel from Carol Danvers, the superhero who Kamala adored. Amanat has drawn in her own life to create a comic that would move beyond labels and stereotypes. In her TEDx talk, her TEDx Teen Talk in 2014, she discusses the stereotype threat that she faced growing up Muslim after 9/11. Amanat believes the power of story is needed in connecting people in ways that challenge narrow and easy racial assumptions. In addition to creating Ms. Marvel, Amanat helped develop Miles Morales, the first African-American and Latino Spiderman. How many of you know about him? Okay. As well as Captain Marvel. And so I think she has more news on that front today, too. Outside of Marvel Entertainment, Amanat also serves as a Young Leaders Committee board member at Seeds of Peace, an organization that empowers youth in regions of conflict. It is an extraordinary treat to have the first ever Marvel appearance at St. Norbert College, so please give a round of applause for Sana Amanat.
Hello guys, thank you so much for having me. It's very exciting to be here. This is the first, I guess, type of interview / presentation that I've done, so forgive me if I get a little bit confused or unnerved because I can see a few of your faces, and other than that, I'm hoping you guys can also hear me clearly.
Yep, you're good.
Good, awesome, okay. So I guess just to sort of dive in a little bit, I am an editor at Marvel. I've been here for about 6 years now, working and developing content for a few different publishing lines. Right now I'm working on a few different titles, including, of course, Ms. Marvel, Captain Marvel, Elektra, Rocket Raccoon, Hawkeye, and did I forget any? New Warriors. So, and that's sort of what's under my domain at the moment. Things kind of change every year depending on sort of what's selling, what's not selling, and whatnot. So being an editor, what does that contain? What does that mean? And a lot of people, the first question that people ask me, they're like, "Oh, you're an editor. You're a comic book editor. That's so cool. What do you do? Do you like edit the balloons, like the periods?" And usually it's very frustrating for me because I think that's a very important job, but obviously there's so much more to being an editor. It's very much likened to being a producer, being sort of a big project manager, making sure that all of the elements of a project get put together in a way that is seamless, that is efficient, and also makes sense for the story. For sort of the last 6 years, that's sort of been my responsibility. And the very exciting moment in an editor's life is when you have the opportunity to pitch a new project. We're always pitching projects, and usually it's based on characters that already exist. But when you have the opportunity to pitch a new character and a new story, it can be very daunting. And a lot of the times it gets shot down. And when it doesn't get shot down and it gets greenlit, chances are the book only lasts for 5 to 9 to 10 issues if we're lucky. So what happened with Ms. Marvel was quite an accomplishment, and I'm still sort of in shock about it. But it's been a very, very interesting time because I feel like while the announcements of Ms. Marvel with Captain Marvel being such a success, I feel like we've been talking more about the representation of women and minority in comics and the importance of that, and I feel like there's been such a resurgence in terms of that dialogue and audiences who are actually willing to embrace that type of content moving forward. So a lot of it is people like you who are really excited about this type of product and this type of conversation, and also sort of on Marvel's end who are actually supporting these types of books, which is really important. So I think we're in a very special and exciting time at Marvel and in the comics industry in general, and it only sort of bodes well for people like you who are studying it, who are reading about it, who are sort of disseminating content to your friends, hopefully. It's a really good time to be at Marvel. And I wanted to sort of backtrack a little bit and talk to you about sort of, I guess, the origin of how Ms. Marvel came to be. So it was probably about like 2 years ago now at this point, where I was having a conversation with my senior editor, and at the time his name is Stephen Wacker. Stephen Wacker, who is actually, I should note, one of the reasons, or actually the reason that Carol Danvers took on the name Captain Marvel from Ms. Marvel, and also got this awesome new costume. He made a big point that he wanted to make sure that she changed her. We took her out of sort of that bathing suit costume that she had and gave her more of sort of a military look. But we can delve into that a little bit later. With Ms. Marvel, we were sitting down having a conversation, very, very casual. He always asked me questions about my childhood, and I was talking about an instance when it was like 90 degrees outside. I was playing lacrosse, and my mom made sure that I was wearing like leggings underneath my shorts and I had a full sleeve shirt on, and he didn't understand. He's like, "That's like, I don't understand. Like you had to be fully covered in 90-degree weather and you're running around with a lacrosse. Like I'm so confused." And I was like, "No, it's normal. Like for me that was normal." And you know, it started reminding me that there's a lot of experiences that I have growing up. And that my nephews and my nieces have right now that a lot of people don't necessarily connect with being normal, or don't really understand that sort of background and that lifestyle. So the next day he walked into the office and he's like, "You know, it'd be really great if we had a character that like connected with people like you, for young girls who grew up just like you. Like, wouldn't that be awesome?" And at that point, like we kind of looked at each other and we're like, "That would be awesome." And we sort of started running from there, and that's where G. Willow Wilson, who, if any of you have read any of her previous work, she's done Mystic for us, she's done Air, she's a very talented writer. She happens to be Muslim American, which was sort of the icing on the cake for me, because I think that her perspective was very, very important, but I really chose her because of her writing more than anything else. And when she came on board, me and her just started working out different ideas. She thought we were crazy. She's like, what? Are you sure you want to do this? There might be some controversy around it. Like, it might seem like a publicity stunt, all of these things. And then about like one conversation into it, she's like, yep, we're doing this. Like, we rolled out a few different ideas. We had some bad ideas, really, really bad ideas, which I cannot mention because I don't think anyone is ever going to trust me as an editor again, because I was like, at one point, yes, let's just say explosions were involved, and a Muslim having some sort of power of exploding things is a very bad idea. So we ran away from that very quickly, and the moment in time when you're developing a character, the most important part to think about is really the essence of the character. Like, what is that moment that is the great power, great responsibility? What is the lifestyle and the side characters of this main hero that makes this character special, that makes audiences want to read on with her journey. And that takes a long time. It takes a long time to actually figure that out. So we actually went through a few different versions of what we wanted to do before I actually went to the creative committee to pitch the idea. And it was sort of when Willow was talking about how she wanted to make her powers about as a polymorph, which means she could change her body and extend it, and maybe she can shape shift, maybe not. That was something we were still trying to figure out. And it dawned on us that it really was ultimately a story about identity, and about sort of self-perception, sort of amidst sort of all of these labels and all of these expectations that people around you are giving to you. Because ultimately, when you have these expectations and labels, you start sort of ascribing yourself to them. You start thinking that, oh, okay, if I am a Pakistani woman, it means that I have to look a certain way, act a certain way, talk a certain way. And it's really hard when you're 15, 16 years old to really pull yourself out of that, to find your own identity and to be strong within that idea of who Kamala Khan is. And I think everybody struggles that in their own way, and that's what that's when sort of we were thinking about Kamala Khan, we thought this is what it's about. It's not about her being a Muslim. That's sort of all of the set pieces of her background, and that's what makes her interesting and unique. But at the same time, it's really just about her kind of finding her way to adulthood, and her finding a way to ignore all of the noise and find her own voice. And that was very, very exciting for us. And that is sort of, when you have that mission statement and you have that idea, you follow it throughout your story, no matter what. Even if we're on issue 100, that is something we have to go back to. And a lot of it is, and I remember when we came down to it, we started realizing that who are the celebrities in her world, right? The celebrities are, of course, superheroes. If you're sitting in Jersey City, you're looking across the river and you're seeing Captain Marvel and Spider-Man and Wolverine. They're all jumping around. They're all and they're beautiful, and they look great, and they're strong, and they're saving the world every single day. And there's this little girl sitting in her high school, and she's the biggest fan of theirs. So when she has the opportunity to have these powers, of course she shapeshifts into her idol, Captain Marvel. And that sort of brings up a whole conversation about once again, about identity, but also about sort of body image. And why did she decide to become Captain Marvel? That was a big thing, and that actually was a little bit of a controversial choice that we got some. Can I curse? No. Yeah, some stuff for. We can talk that a little bit later, but it wasn't until we had the creative committee, when I had the pitch, when I remember Joe Quesada, like after I had finished it, Joe Quesada said, "That is a Marvel story. That is a Peter Parker Spider-Man classic Marvel story," and we knew we had something very special. So here we are, almost a year to the date of the announcement, and Ms. Marvel is one of our surprisingly biggest new series of the year. It is consistently one of our #1 digital sellers online, and I couldn't feel happier. This is the definition of the lightning in the bottle. So I feel very blessed, and I think it's exciting to see what's going to happen with this character and what's going to happen at Marvel in years to come. So. Yeah. Well, sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, sorry, I had to say that. Yeah. So we have a special guest here who just wants to say hello.
This is an entire classroom.
This is, yes. Don't be nervous. He's a little nervous, guys. This is Axel Alonso, editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics.
I see Wonder Woman shirts in the front row. What's that about?
We want costumes. You can send us costumes and we'll wear them gladly. So many selfies will be taken.
We're working on it.
Yeah.
I understand you guys have been doing a little reading this week. What do you think of what you've read so far? Show of hands? Like what you see?
Love it.
Well, I'm very proud to be editor-in-chief of Marvel right now at this juncture because, you know, we're in a position now where I think we have a historic number of titles anchored by female leads. It was only, I think, about 3 years ago that we realized with the cancellation of X-23 that we weren't going to have a single title anchored by a female lead. We had prominent female characters in X-Men. We had them, you know, throughout the Marvel Universe in supporting roles. We had a book called Fearless Defenders, which featured a couple of female leads, but no one with their name in the title. And we went about really changing that in the past year. I think at this point we're up around 11 or 12 or 13.
14 in production.
14 in production right now, and I'm very happy at how diverse they are. I think that if you've been reading this week, I think you could see that Ms. Marvel, I look at it as being the sort of the crowning glory of all new Marvel now. But Ms. Marvel is a very different book from She-Hulk. They're both very different from Elektra, which are in turn very different from Black Widow. The tone, the sensibility, the aesthetic of all these books is very different. So we're really trying to reach out and find readers of all stripes.
I don't know if there was any particular, I don't know if we're going to jump into the Q&A or if there's anything else that you need us to cover before we jump into the Q&A. I have a very loose format here.
Yeah, which is good. I'm Anna. I'm the assistant director of the Cassandra Voss Center, and I'm going to help lead the Q&A.
Okay, great.
We can get started. Do we have questions for? Don't be shy. I know there's a little star power happening here, but. Oh, we have one.
Come on, let's go.
All right.
I'm not sure how much you may be involved in the movie process at with Marvel Films, but when do you think we would see a movie with a main female lead?
Have you been reading the news?
We've been So can you say more maybe about that process, what it took to get the Captain Marvel movie really in the mainstream?
Well, you know, I'm not really qualified to talk about the Marvel Studios' decisions. I've been somewhat in the loop about what's being on the table. I know that if you take a look at the most recent offerings through Marvel Studios, the announcements of the Captain Marvel movie, the Black Widow movie, and Inhumans, that I think you see a lot of diversity on this slate. I think it's just like in publishing, it's very important that there's diversity of product and diversity of characters. It's clear from this recent wave of announcements that commitment extends through to Marvel Studios. I myself am a huge Black Panther fan. I grew up reading that comic book as a kid. I read all of those comic books. Show of hands, you know. I think he had the greatest costume in all of comics. I was mildly disappointed when he peeled back the mask and I learned that he wasn't Hispanic. I still liked him. You know, the long and short of it is it's very exciting to me to see, I think with Captain Marvel on the big screen soon and Black Panther, we're soon going to be living in a world where just like everybody recognizes Now, everybody in the world knows who Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Black Widow are. We're going to be living in a world soon where everyone knows who Captain Marvel and Black Panther are, and I think that's really, really cool.
Good. Right up here. Can you say, well, let's say your name and then your question.
All right, I'm Alex. I'm a big fan of Marvel, by the way. And I'm just wondering, what got the idea of the female Thor, and I haven't really read the newer stuff. I like the older stuff more, but what got kind of kicked off with the Captain Marvel being Carol Danvers? I know I've seen a bunch of stuff with her being like Guardians of the Galaxy and even this Marvel Live. I think she's been a part of it now.
Yeah. I mean, with Carol Danvers, it was really about, and all due respect, we have so much respect for the history of Marvel comics and a lot of our characters, of course, but we thought it was time to sort of create a character that was a little bit more relevant to the female demographic, something that was a bit more accessible, and quite frankly, a costume that was easy to fly around and punch bad guys in. And I don't think a bathing suit and thigh-high boots were quite conducive to the task.
Yeah, I've tried it. It doesn't work.
Good to know. Real research. So it was fundamentally about that. But I remember Stephen Wacker, who was really, as I had mentioned before, really big, sort of the brains behind this operation, had said that I really want to be able to give a comic that I can give to my daughter, and he didn't feel comfortable giving her a comic that had this really beautiful tall woman but in sort of revealing clothing. So that's really where it came from, and I think that it spoke to a lot of what people had wanted based on the reaction that we had. And I think now that we do have this announcement of the Captain Marvel movie in 2018, it shows that there's corporate validation of that fact, and that's wonderful. That's amazing. That's a victory for us.
Thanks.
Oh, what about the female Thor? Sorry, that was...
Thor's in it yet.
Yeah. Speaking to Thor, the way that came about is Jason Aaron, the writer of Thor: God of Thunder, had an idea. It was simple as that. He had an idea that in the event Original Sin, that there would be a moment where Thor, the guy you know as Thor from the big screen, would be incapacitated and unable to pick up the hammer. And Jason put forth the theory that someone must always be able to wield the hammer. They just need to be worthy. And his idea was that someone would indeed prove to be worthy, and that character would be a female character who was, let's just say, had a history with Thor, some relationship to Thor. So this wouldn't be a new character, but someone who readers had met, and that this character would prove to be worthy, would wield the hammer and become the new Thor. We never ever considered calling the character Lady Thor or She Thor or any variation on that. There's only one Thor, and she's a woman.
What's her name?
I'm going to go on to other questions so other folks can ask. Say your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Gabby Hapte. So speaking of Kamala, I really love the dynamics between her and her family, especially like her brother and her father. Like, can you maybe pull that out a little bit more? Especially the interesting fact that her brother is definitely more religiously sound compared to her parents, and maybe pulling that out a little more if you can.
What do you mean pulling that out? Talk about
the relationship, especially between Kamala and her father, especially. I think that was a really interesting dynamic, especially because I was curious about why did you put her brother as more of the religious compared to her father, and is that maybe specific to your family as well, or anybody in general?
That's a really good question. I mean, it wasn't the idea behind having sort of these different perspectives in her household was just to show that there are different perspectives about religion or culture or just the way that you live your life. And I think it was important to show that that's sort of what happens, that everyone has a different interpretation of what they believe in. And Kamala has her own, and her brother has his own, and her father has his own too. And I think that's also very authentic and realistic because, everyone who, if anyone's, I'm from a very big family myself, but anyone who comes from of a family of more than 2 people, you realize that everyone's personalities come out in different ways, and you have to interact with them, and sometimes they influence you, sometimes you reject them, but it's really up to you to sort of figure out where you fit within that landscape. And I really love, in particular, I think her relationship with her father is very special because while he's a little bit more relaxed, he's still pretty conservative. But he finds a lot of similarities in Kamala, like to himself. And I think that's a really beautiful relationship. And having a very strong relationship with her family and with her father, with certain characters, is really important to sort of dressing up who the character is, and that was really where it came from.
And I think it also speaks, authenticity, I think, speaks to the writer, Willow Wilson, who is herself Muslim, and made very conscious decisions about the dynamic she wanted to have within the household. I think that the success of Kamala Khan says a lot about how her story is universal, but I also think that she speaks specifically to certain people. I'm neither Pakistani nor a 16-year-old girl who lives in Jersey City. I assure you of that. But I'm first-generation American. My parents are not from here. And I find there to be a lot of truths in seeing Kamala's experience. I know what it's like to look across a river at a city that I want to live in. I think that I'm certain that there's a lot of people that feel that way, and I think that it's the textures that Willow's bringing to that character that make her three-dimensional and lovable.
I'd be curious to hear from those of you who are studying and using Ms. Marvel in the curriculum for your courses. If you have any questions based on doing a little bit of a different sort of lens and different analysis of Ms. Marvel. I know you prepared questions. Go ahead.
I'm Colin, yes, and it was nice that you brought up the authenticity of it, because what I really enjoyed, especially with the dialogue, is that you lift some of the words. You had a blend of English as well as another, I don't really know which language it is, so like in terms of endearment, or it's like instead of saying dad, it's, what is it, like pa?
Abu, yeah.
Yes, that. It's like, I really enjoyed that. And I'm kind of wondering, sometimes there's like a translation box to establish what it means, but you keep it up. It's like, I like that you keep it in the dialogue, but sometimes it's translated or has like something, and sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there's context clues, but who gets to decide? Is that an editorial decision to decide which words get translated, or is that up to the author, or I mean writer?
It's a little bit of both. I think sometimes we don't want to pull. I tend to, with translations, it can be tough because sometimes it pulls you out of the story, and I think in other moments it's important because it will be completely confusing if you don't have it. So we just try to figure out exactly what makes sense in that particular scene, and hopefully it's not too confusing when we don't translate it. But yeah, that's basically about it.
Other questions from anyone? Go ahead. Your name and your question.
Alina, and I was just kind of wondering if you had any advice on how to continue like a dialogue going about women and female minorities being strong characters in our society.
Were you able to hear that?
Yes. A dialogue is constantly happening. It's actually not. It hasn't stopped. The one thing I'll note is that Women of Marvel panel that we do at every convention, every New York and San Diego convention, that is. And this year was actually pretty amazing because we had over 16 people on stage, and those are all women creators who are working at Marvel currently. So that was quite an accomplishment. And we have that dialogue to talk about sort of what's happening in the industry, how can we make it better, what's concerning us, how can we sort of lend a hand to each other to support one another in our endeavors, whether we want to read comic books or if we want to actually be a part of the industry at some point. That dialogue is always happening, and then we actually, from that, we initiated a podcast called the Women of Marvel Podcast that we are now going weekly. So there is a way to, if you want to sort of insert yourself into the conversation, we are on the internet. You just have to come find us and join it.
Thanks. Mm-hmm. We have time for probably, let's see, we got about 20 minutes, so Mike, four more questions. Go ahead. Name and your question.
I'm Heidi, and this is kind of random, but I like that you chose to cover her up more instead of the whole bathing suit thing. But I was kind of wondering if there's gonna be any like bigger female superheroes, like fluffier, plus size.
That's a great question. It's time that we do it. The one thing I will note is that we try to, at least we are making more of a concerted effort in our comics to make characters look, and particularly female characters, look a lot more realistic. And if you check out Captain Marvel, she has a whole cast of characters around her who are so diverse and so varied and so hilarious and adorable. And I think that you'll definitely find a connection to those stories too. And we are constantly thinking about that, though. We are constantly thinking about how to make sure that our characters are not only diverse from a minority perspective, but just look like everybody. And so hopefully that's something that we will continue to do.
Thanks.
My name is Riley, and continuing on with making sure that characters look more realistic. Are you familiar with the Hawkeye Initiative?
What do you mean? Like the book, or there's something going on that I'm not aware of?
It's where people take female comic characters that are in like ridiculous positions in the drawings, and then have someone else, usually Hawkeye, in that position to show how ridiculous.
No, haven't heard of it.
Well, I think we'll all be Googling that after this. Thank you. All right. Oh, we have time for 2 more questions. Go ahead.
In recent years, it seems like, I'm Carolyn, sorry. But in recent years, it seems like a lot of the artists that have been chosen to work on the books, that there's like a branching out from kind of the traditional comic book style. And I was just wondering if that was kind of something that happened organically, or was it kind of a conscious decision kind of to reflect the broadening of like the branching out to creating more different characters and storylines and stuff.
I will say I certainly encouraged it. I think I grew up with comics that were very diverse in their aesthetic. I went through the list of artists I loved. They were diverse from the naturalistic, photorealistic Neil Adams to the blocky Kirby, Alex Toth. You could just go down the list. And I think that I definitely tried to encourage with my editors a sense that you should be looking for the right artist for this project, an artist that complements the tone. Minimally, I hate the idea that there might be a house style. I reject the notion of a house style. I think the comics are about aesthetic diversity as well as story diversity. So I guess I would say it was conscious on some level. Yeah.
It's also important to note that each character has a specific tone and a style to it, and that's something that definitely came out organically. That we are, Axel really encouraged us to have diverse storylines and diverse characters, and I think from that we realized that it didn't all have to look one particular way. I think so much of what makes Ms. Marvel successful is the very sort of whimsical aesthetic of what Adrian Alphona and Ian Herring are doing.
Yeah.
And that really sets the tone for the series and really makes the characters so much more endearing, I think.
If you take a look at 4 of the launches, Adrian Alphona on Ms. Marvel, Phil Noto on Black Widow, Mike Del Mundo on Elektra, and let's say Javier Pulido on She-Hulk. They're very, very different artists, and I think all of those artists really complemented and changed and set the tone for what that book was about. I think that Ms. Marvel would have been a really good book if any of those other artists had drawn it, but it wouldn't have been the same book or quite the same book.
We have time for 2 final questions. So up front, your name and your question.
I'm Colin. This is sort of, he's also Colin. This is sort of a bizarre question, but what's the significance of those winged sloths that keep showing up?
Oh. Okay, there's no particular significance. It's just Adrian Alphona being a crazy genius of an artist. It's how his brain works. When he was sending in the sketches for Kamala Khan and her family, he would just draw in animals on the side. Like at one point he drew, what was it? Oh yeah, porcupine with a Hulk fist. While after I was like, can you send me a sketch of Kamala like in her costume? He's like, sure, and then he puts a porcupine with a Hulk fist at the bottom. And I was like, all right, and that's the image that we sent out to the entire world. So, but I think that's kind of I love the fact that we have that, because Adrian is always constantly surprising us with all these different elements, and really makes and because of that he makes the world a little bit more interesting to look at when you're sort of reading Kamala's life. And I will note that when he was sort of sending images with the winged sloth in it, I was like, we have to sort of find a way to make this at least somewhat believable. So we made it one of her favorite stuffed animals from when she was a kid. So if you'll notice, it's always sitting by her bed or on her bed. So it's an element, and that's sort of also why it's in that dream that she has in issue 1 with Captain Marvel and all the other Avengers in it. And that's sort of, it's a part of her subconscious because she loves it so much.
Fantastic.
Great. One final question. I saw this hand first over here. Your name and your question.
My name's Kendra. I'm just curious as to how you got to be editor at Marvel. What did you go to school for, and how did you get your job, I guess?
Me or Axel, or both of us, I guess.
You, sure.
Well, I mean, for me, I didn't really think having a job in comics was a thing that people actually did. I majored in political science and Middle Eastern studies. It didn't quite make sense for me to work in comics, but I was actually working in publishing for a little while, and actually that's Axel's background as well. He was doing, and I was working at magazines, and then I went to online publishing, and for me it was really, I didn't find it really creatively challenging. And there just happened to be an opening at a small indie comic book company, and I was like, well, let me just try and see if they'll like me. And I actually ended up getting a job there and getting training, on-the-job training at this company, which really opened me up more to sort of the other world of comics, which was the sort of industry making comics, like what it means to be an editor and how to develop a story and work with talent and things like that. So it was a lot of happenstance, and then a lot of it was also people encouraging me, people that I had met who saw certain things in me that they wanted to see grow into something within the industry. So not the traditional path, but it was still one I feel very lucky to have happened to be on. So
like Sana, I never ever dreamed of a career in comics. I had no idea one existed. I like Sana too. I had a bachelor's in politics and sociology. I went on to, after a few years as a journalist, to get a master's in journalism at Columbia University, and I was a journalist. In '93, I answered an ad in the New York Times on a lark because DC Comics was hiring editors, and I thought, hey, I'll send them my resume. I got an interview with an editor, the late Lou Stathis, who greeted me by saying, I've always wanted to meet you. I had no idea what he was talking about because there was no reason anyone would know who I was. Someone said, met me. And it turned out that he kept an article I'd written for a local newspaper. I have a very uncommon name, Axel Alonso. It's the kind of name you remember if you rip it out of a magazine. And in that article, it had been a story about the use of the cannabis leaf in pop culture, and I interviewed the head of marijuana drug enforcement laws in the DEA to represent one point of view, and then the editor of High Times magazine, the marijuana advocacy magazine, on the other. And both of them, being so extreme, they come across as being kind of silly. Lou had a gripe with the editor of High Times because that guy had stolen his girlfriend. I kept that article and read it several times, remembered my name because I'd made this guy look like an idiot. And we spoke for about half an hour, and then he offered me the job. Really have any? I mean, so I guess what I'm saying in a roundabout way is it was complete utter luck. I was not certain I wanted the job. I regretted making the decision to go into comics for at least a year after I was in because I took a pay cut to make less than half of what I was making in journalism. But it worked out ultimately. I enjoyed my time at Vertigo DC Comics doing non-superhero comics. Around 2000, then publisher Bill Jemas came to me and asked me if I'd like to work for Marvel. I said absolutely not. And the company was really vulnerable. At the time, I wasn't particularly impressed by what they were doing, but Bill really wanted to change things, and he made me an offer I couldn't refuse, even though it was very meager. I was a dummy, and I came over, and it's been a great ride ever since.
Well, Axel and Sana, we just want to thank you so much from the St. Norbert College Cassandra Voss Center for being with us today and talking about what it means to pitch a comic, make it happen, and to be a leader in the field thinking about identity in comics. So from all of us here in Wisconsin, we say thank you so much.
All right. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Excelsior.
So if you want to tweet or post about this event,